Okay, part two, so to speak. Got this thing off, and my wife hold that chain tight near the bottom just to avoid anything slipping down below under the clutch cover. I wrapped it back up once I got it off of here. There's the other chain guide. Alright, this guy right here. Right there is that bad valve that we need to tap out. Flip this upside down. And if you look right there, you can, maybe you can't see it as well as I can. There is a definite gap where it's not wanting to close all the way, which is what's causing me to backfire and shut down. But if you notice such a color difference between the intakes and the exhaust. The exhausts look like they're cleaner, but that's not the case. That's all the smoky gas is getting shot out of there. It's interesting. But alright, that takes us into the point where I now need to begin to tap this guy out of here, because he ain't going to fall out under his own pressure, and there is no way I'm going to make that happen with my finger. So I'll back up a second, grab a mallet and something that hopefully won't destroy the rest of the head here when I start hammering on it, and go from here. Alright, so here we are part way. It wasn't terribly difficult to tap out. I used this mallet here that I used to install my flooring a while back, and this 1/4 inch extension I had. It slipped pretty easy, but I'm to the point now where the what do you want to call this? The oil sleeve and washers down in here are in my way. It's still too hard to pull out by hand. I have no wiggle at all. So I guess the next thing is we'll go to a smaller screwdriver and see how much further I can tap this down. Alright, it's out. I ended up using this pair of channel locks and just tapping at the handle. Slowly made its way out. The little screwdriver wasn't getting me nowhere. I don't really have anything to sit this on that's probably going to help me demonstrate it. But there is a slight curvature to it. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think I can get it across, especially having a shadow, but yeah, you can probably tell there that's not straight anymore. Surprising how little can cause so many problems. But there we go. Bad valve out. I'll leave the head sitting here till tomorrow. My new valve's going to come in, and we'll continue this rebuild. Cool thing is, if I wanted to, and I probably should, I could pop off my carbs now and take those in and have them cleaned and synced. That was done 2 years ago. I really don't want to have to fool with that. It ran great before this valve thing happened. I'm hoping the backfire and junk didn't cause too many problems for me, but it very well may have. Guess something I'll show you now if you've never looked inside here. Here's number 2, here's number 1. Number 1 is a nasty looking guy. I don't know what that's all about. Number 2 don't look too great, but I can at least tell where the valve seat. Geez, that just looks like somebody's been grilling out. It looks like charcoal. Here you can see the fluid reservoir, not the fluid reservoirs, but the lines for the coolant, where it runs through the head itself. That's pretty neat. And then you've got your bolt locations. So there we go. Like I said, my part will be in tomorrow. It's a used valve. I'll see what happens if I have to get into actually taking this and having it seated properly. We've also got those little oil seals up inside. Hopefully they didn't get too damaged. It kind of looks like there is a small crack. It focused and went out. Fairly certain there's a small crack down inside here now. You should be able to see what I'm talking about there. I'm sure that's not good. So I will stop here, pick it up again tomorrow. Alright, we are down to the reassembly portion of this. My replacement valve came in today. Drop this guy in here. Bought that used off of eBay. Everything staring at this looks to be alright. I know there is, I guess standard procedure would be to have this, I don't want to say milled, but if you have the right dies, you need to grind these down, so to speak, so that these valves seat properly. It's kind of my feeling. I'm buying a used valve. Obviously I'm replacing a used valve, so I don't expect there to be as much of a problem as if buying a brand new one and putting it in here that's never been seated before. But alright, I might have to put the camera down from here, flip this guy over. I guess one thing I'll hit on real quick before I miss that part is I'm going to take this back out. I'm going to get some grease. According to the service manual, you want to put a little bit of moly grease on this. Old manual, that may have changed somewhat to use something else recommended, but it's not going to last very long on this as it is. So I'm going to pull this back out, put a little grease on there, slide it back in, and I'll get to the fun part of trying to reinstall the valve springs and the keepers. Alright, there it is right here. Valve spring, the little keepers are seated in there. Flip it over, take a look. Paper towel wedged in there. Alright, now I got both my intakes back in. Now, I don't have the valve compressor tool, valve spring compressor tool I should say. There's not so much tension on these springs that you can't do this without it. Definitely save you some time if you've already got the head removed. But essentially what I've done, and this is kind of the second time, I had a helper the first time. I used this paper towel up underneath to hold the valve in place, give me some tension on that, or pressure on that while I press the spring down from above. A little hard to do with your fingers, definitely painful that way. So what I used was just a pair of pliers. You got the rubber grips, kind of soften it up on the metal here. Try not to damage anything. Basically, you just take your time. You want to, you see I got the small screwdriver. I use that. You can get a small bolt or something, kind of wedge that in there so that I maintain an opening. And as I put pressure with one hand, I'm able to guide those keepers in with the other. So not impossible to do if you don't have the tool, but if you got one, use it, definitely. Alright, that's back in. Now I've got to unhook this chain, set the valve header back down, and start putting these bolts together. Alright, starting to look more like a motor again. First things first, I had, wasn't too difficult to get this back in. Like I said before, trying to keep the tension on that chain, I just kind of tilted the valve head sideways so that I could slide the chain into the actual chain well. Two people makes this much easier than one, so if you can get a helper, by all means, take that help. Once I got this on here, make sure you get your little guides, sort of like up here, in place, and that'll fall right in and stay where you want it. Then you can kind of deal more with getting your carburetor connected back up. I didn't have any trouble at all. These were nice and soft and slid right on. Got these tightened down. The problem I ran into was with the airbox connections, and you can see them both there, the springs at the forward of that. This one in particular, if I can focus on that properly, there's not a gap, so to speak, but in order for the intakes to be where they need to be, I had to give up a little space back here coming from the box, which I don't really like. That's the whole idea, having a filter. But it's only on the cylinder number 1 side. Over here, not that I can get you a good angle of it, but yeah, right there, that seated right like it should have. So somewhere in the air box, the way it's kind of mounted in this frame, it's got to be cockeyed, but I don't know. That's the way it's always been, I guess. I may have some wiggle in the head itself that maybe I can tighten that up once I get these bolts in. Alright, the next few things, the bolt pattern. While we're buckling this back in, you've got your guide right here. You're going to need to take this back out. We're going to slide this in place, back in, tighten it down. You've got a guide here that's just kind of hanging out free. What you need to do, because there's an order that they specify, and not that I can get you another good view again, but alright, this is in between the 2 cylinders. This is where you start. You're going to go up here. That's going to be number 1. That's going to be number 2. That's going to be number 3, number 4. And then over here, you got number 5 right there. Come over here, number 6. Then we tighten down number 7. That's the short one that drops down inside. And then what they label as number 8, I believe, is meant to be this guy right here. And that's the little 1-inch guy. Tighten him up in there last. So again, we're using these really long bolts. Our short guy, which is the one that's going to be number 7 when you're tightening these down. Make sure you refer to the manual for your torque specifications. I can't tell you offhand just what these are individually supposed to be, but it's all in there. Alright, I think at this point that's what I'm going to start doing. We'll take a quick little break here and pull you back up with the next piece.